Hello, good evening. Welcome to H3, the show about health, hope, and happiness. I am Alan Friesen Acapellis, and with me is Brother Scott Sweetman. How you doing tonight, Brother Scott?
I'm doing great. Sun shining in through the window here. Yeah, I'm doing great. How about you?
I am doing very well. I'm doing very well. This is not the topic of tonight's show, but I had an experience last night about this breathing kind of a therapy sort of a thing.
Oh,
It
yeah.
was yeah, it was quite amazing. I really enjoyed it. It's called, what is it called again? 9D breath work is what it's called.
Oh,
So maybe another episode we could talk about that.
is it an online thing or is it something that you went to? Or
We went to it and we had a facilitator to guide you through this experience, and it basically involved a lot of deep breathing and kind of following a narrator who was telling you how to breathe, and it was a very active breathing process. So
is
yeah,
it a group thing or a private
yeah, it's a
thing?
group thing. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
that's nice. So,
yeah.
yeah, that's
But tell us,
working
what
well.
are we talking about tonight, Scott?
We are talking about WTH. What
W,
the?
what the hell is that? What that means?
Well, to some people, that's certainly what it means. No, WFH.
WFH. Okay.
Working from home.
Ah, working from home. All right,
Yeah,
nice, nice.
yeah.
Okay.
I was all excited about WTH instead of WFH. Yeah, so really interesting this morning. I got up and on my news feeds there were some really great articles about the whole fight about working from home that's going on right now. Have you?
Mhm.
I know you don't say plugged into media, but have you heard about what's going on?
Well, not really recently. I know at the start of COVID, like not every employer, but a lot of employers were concerned. Oh, people working from home, they're going to not be productive, and then the profitability and productivity would drop considerably, and all that kind of stuff. And I believe a lot of that has been unfounded, right? That basically the working from home for many circumstances is a very, very effective way. But tell me more about what you've learned today.
Well, that was a great summary, actually. But there are people that game the system, right? I mean, there are people. There's when you do a search. So after and it's funny because there was a bunch of articles that came up about it today, and when I started looking into it in a little bit of depth, because we've talked a little bit about it before, but it was talking about basically the argument is over, and the reason the argument is over is because we're experiencing it in Canada. It's been experienced already in Europe, and that's where more people. So the companies, after COVID stuff washed out, companies started implementing basically office requirements, saying, okay, yes, we understand the benefits, but you need to be in the office 3 days a week for communication and for productivity and for whatever. And there was a lot of backlash to that. And at first, companies said, well, it'll weed out the people that really want to work, and the economy's not great. And, you know, we'll win this. We just have to, it'll be a bit of a bump in the road. And, people come back to we've done work this way for 200 years. It's not like, it's anything new, right? Well, that didn't happen. And what's worse for the companies is that higher level management, particularly in creative areas or even like engineering or development, a lot of senior level management rebelled and said, you know what, we'll work at a company that requires us to be in the office less and pays us less. And yes, we've worked for you for 30 years, but if you can't see the value to our health and well-being and our life balance, then we're going to move. And
Mhm.
first the companies were like, okay, yeah, sure, we can weather this. It's a small thing. But as the article today and subsequent articles were showing, that it's an issue, and companies are losing. They anticipated losing lower level jobs, people that were easy to replace, somebody who needs a job will, see our rules, and they'll want the job more than they care about having to come into the office. But it's turned into a real drain, and it's become a very strong negative for large companies, and a lot of corporations in Canada, for example, have had to back off on their mandated days in the office if they want to retain their key staff. And we're talking like C-level staff.
Mhm.
And it's been a boon for smaller corporations that are willing to be more flexible, because suddenly talent and experience that they thought they'd never be able to afford are willing to take a cut in pay for the, I won't say convenience, but for the benefits of working remotely.
Mhm. Mhm.
And
Interesting.
so what we're seeing now is that economically, the return to office movement has all but petered out. Most of the sources that I looked at have said, the argument is dead. The companies no longer have the leverage, even at their highest levels, to force people back to the office, 4 or 5 days a week. There's some room for discussion on 2 or 3, but above that, if an employee is being productive and is finding working remotely, they're willing to take cuts in other areas to continue that.
That's awesome.
Which I
That's
thought was really interesting, because in benefits, as you know, we're seeing that too, more and more, as a condition for employment or retention, people are looking for quality benefits. And so I really see that in a number of areas, workers are considering their life balance more than their big high salaries.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. Well, and, I mean, if you think of just the difference in costs even for the commuting, the time to commute, the expenses related to, going out for, lunches and, those kind of things that you would otherwise have at home, even in the case of moms with their childcare, those kind of things, the more that they can kind of look after the needs of the employer and look after their family's needs in a more convenient fashion, I mean, the better off they're at. So, right?
Well, that seems where there seems to be sort of a development now, and some of the issues come from separating and sorting out. And I know that Revenue Canada's always had strong views on, if you use your car for work, if you have a home office, how much is deductible, or how much, and so there is now discussions about, okay, so I'm working from home, so the company doesn't have to pay for an office. Do they pay for my internet? Do they pay for my, whatever else people? So there are, it's not cut and dried. There's not a simple solution, except that more and more people really are embracing this idea that life balance is more important.
Mhm, mhm. Nice.
One of the hot topics right now is hybrid models, and that's trying to combine the benefits of remote working with the advantages of in-office collaboration.
Mhm. Okay. Yeah.
That seems to be the one thing that a lot of proponents of remote working are willing to accept, that in-person collaboration is stronger than virtual collaboration. What do you think about that?
Well, yeah, I gotta believe that makes sense, like, in terms of just, like, having sitting eyeball to eyeball with somebody kind of a thing, that it's a more, it's a more complete experience kind of a thing. You can better connect with your coworkers in that way, right? I gotta believe that. I mean, Zoom or Teams or whatever the vehicle you're using is pretty effective as well, but, there's nothing like in person, right? So
One of the things that it has sort of come out of that as well is a whole business in monitoring your staff at home.
Hmm.
I was really surprised. Like, there's an app that monitors how much the mouse is moved
Oh,
on the
really?
computer, and then of course the photograph from the article sort of showed a Rube Goldberg setup where the spring was moving the mouse back and forth, so it looked like there was mouse activity, but
Ah,
there wasn't. But I was really surprised at how quickly industry and that creative spirit has come up with ways and trying to sell corporations on the idea of being monitored while you work remotely. What do you think the effect of that is on health?
well, I'm not too sure. It kind of surprises me that they would have to get to that level of micromanagement, right? Like, if the work is getting done, the client's needs are getting looked after, whether that client's internally or externally, if those performance standards are being met, like, what would that matter, right? In terms of how much the mouse moves, or those kind of details, right? So I'm getting a little feedback here. Is there something I got to change on my end? Are you hearing it?
No, you sound clear to me.
Oh, okay. Sounds. I can hear just a tad of an echo, but that's all right. No worries.
It's funny because the sun is setting here. I'm on the west side of Lethbridge, and so it's bouncing off things on my desk. And every once in a while, I get like a flash in my face. So I'm not being broken into, and I don't have somebody shining a flashlight. It's just the sun setting.
Good news. Good news.
Right. Yeah. So I think it's true, and I think that's the argument about what do employers buy, right? What do they buy with their wages? Are they buying time, or are they buying productivity? Are they buying originality? Are they buying, what is that relationship? Which I think it's healthy to look at. We've been doing it one way since, basically the Industrial Revolution, Victorian age in Europe, England and Europe. So I think it's fair enough that we're having a conversation about exactly what we're trading our life for, because most people, spend as much or more time at work. I forget the statistics. I saw them last week on like the amount of time you spend at home, the amount of time you spend sleeping, the amount of time you spend eating, the amount of time you spend in the bathroom. And it's really surprising how much of our life pie is actually free,
Mm-hmm.
right? Of course, we all need to eat, and yes, you can eat faster, slower, but it's still something that consumes a certain part of your day, right? Using the washroom, sleeping, those types of things. So when you add it up, I think that it really becomes important what we're doing with that free time, or how much of that true free time we have.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So one of the things that has come out of this is increased need for mental health support, and a lot of questions. And in a lot of the articles I was reading, both sides claim that it's a result of the other side.
Mm.
So those proponents of working from home are saying that they're under a lot of stress to return to the office, and to give up that work-life balance, and that produces a lot of mental anxiety and stress, which they're needing healthcare for.
Mm.
On the other side, people are saying, well, my coworkers and my employees are all working remotely. I'm alone, which means that I'm ending up doing everyone else's work that they don't get done because I'm the only one in the office. So things, I have to sign for the courier, and I have to, all these little things, but they add up quite quickly if they're falling on one or two people where they used to, fall in an office of 6, 10, 20 people. So how do you see that working? Where do you see the stress being?
Well, yeah, I can certainly see that. For like, loneliness is an epidemic, right? Like, and loneliness is the cause of so many mental health challenges. So I can see kind of where, one case, working from home, gives you a lot more latitude perhaps in your day and how it's going to unfold and the activities you're going to do. So I can see that. But then again, if in fact, you have a need for connection with other human beings, and you were getting that in the workplace before, and now that's not happening, right? I can see that, where it could be, depending on the person, where it could be a challenge either way, right? What is sad, or no, what is unfair perhaps, is that, the employee who is totally satisfied working from home and is effective at what they're doing and has connection with other human beings, maybe family members, or, maybe not coworkers, but they don't have loneliness as a burden for them. But now they have all these mental health pressures from the employer saying, you got to come in, you got to come in, you got to come in, right? So I can see that as being that's kind of a little bit of a, it would be very individual specific in terms of what would be the best for the person. And then there's the competing interests of what the employer perceives as best for the company, right? So yeah. Yeah, I
Well,
can't see any reason though why any remote type work is in any way less effective than in office type work. And
mhm.
as you know, in our environment, we are very what would you call it? Adaptable to working remotely, right? I mean, we as our team kind of rarely kind of get together in the same place at the same time, except for like a weekly kind of a Zoom kind of a thing, and the rest of the times are a lot we're kind of working independently in a collaborative, collective way to get our clients served well. So
Well, and I think in our case, as an example, we have a clear mission and we have shared goals, right? So we're not, we don't need outside motivation. I mean, we do get together, like you said, and we get, after our meetings, we're feeling good and ready to go, and cleared up any questions we have. But it makes us more nimble for our clients, certainly, right? Like we're always available for our clients, which in an office, there's so much time where, for whatever reason, I remember, working out of an office, and there's always something on the agenda, right? There's always something physically that seems to you have to attend. Where here we can really address whatever needs to be addressed. We're free from those regular constraints, except for one or two. So I definitely see that being a case. And that goes back to the original article where it was talking about how smaller companies are benefiting. And they were going pretty hard on that economically, they're seeing an increase in the viability of small to medium companies that are benefiting from the brain drain or skill drain of larger companies who are not being flexible on the working situation. They're losing those key staff to smaller companies, which are benefiting greatly.
mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I know from an economic standpoint, it's a long-standing argument what's better for the economy. But certainly in Canada, we believe that the more startups we have, the more small to mid-size companies and entrepreneurs we have, the better our economy is doing. Right? I mean,
Right.
there are economies based on large companies. I know in Japan, for example, after World War II, they broke up the Komatsu, the giant companies, because they felt they were a threat to peace and stability, because they de facto acted like, the government advisors. They had that much control over the economy. And still, although they're broken up, the presidents and vice presidents meet for a weekly golf session and a drink once a week. So they're still coordinating their activities very, very well. But one area that it's not surprising, and it's one that helps our team, is that people with mobility issues have been able to enter the workforce in the strongest numbers in decades. One U.S. Polling company for I believe it was for the New Year. Bloomberg Business Week says that there's an increase of 39% in the people with mobility disabilities entering the workforce,
Really?
primarily through remote working or alternative hybrid situations.
Wow,
That's
that's
a huge increase.
huge. That's very that's great news, right? That, people that otherwise might be excluded from participating then have now a greater opportunity to participate. No, that's beautiful.
I think that's a win-win, because often people who can't, who are disabled and can't provide for themselves have to take financial assistance, because it's not necessarily that they don't have the ability. There's just not a situation, when I was very sick, and still, although, now today I can work a full day plus, 2-3 years ago, that was impossible. Physically, it was just not a possibility. the transporting to and from required, basically someone to dedicate their time to taking me and, helping me get there because my wheelchair didn't fit on public transport, etc. But having people that would otherwise often be receiving support from the system, active and paying taxes and being able to support their families or themselves, I think is a win on a lot of different levels, right?
Very much so. Yeah, very much so.
And community, as we talk a lot about self-esteem, and I can't speak for women, I'm not one in this life, maybe in a past life I was, but men are very much associated to their jobs in terms of their self-worth and their self-esteem. And I think that remote working helps level the playing field, right? Because it's, I know that in some countries, for example, when you apply for a job, you have to include a photograph of yourself. And in those cultures, they don't hide the fact that they're looking for a particular look of an employee, right? They want somebody that's attractive, somebody that's young, somebody that, has the right length of hair, the right, things to match the image. And with remote working from home, I think that it frees us from some of those visible constraints. I don't know how you would.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know how you would word that, but you know what I'm saying, right? Like
Right.
that. It takes one more piece off the board of inequality.
Right.
I mean, we've certainly dealt with, sexism and gender and all of those issues, but remote working, I think, has leveled the playing field much more, especially when we see like 39% growth in an area where traditionally it was hard for people to be employed.
Yeah, exactly. No, I think that is a more equitable result to that those aren't characteristics or criteria used in terms of employing somebody. It becomes more their ability to serve the clients, right? So, yeah.
One of the things that the articles looked at was that a side effect of this has been an increase in technology. And so in the past, technology has been centralized, right? So offices would have a big main server, and then they would have basically a workstation that wasn't independent, right? It ran off a mainframe. All of the data was secure. And one of the articles I was reading was talking about how security is a growing issue with more people working from home. And I was thinking about our industry and something that we're always concerned with, privacy, and we take a lot of steps to make sure that information is secure. But they were talking about how technology is being driven by this whole shift. Have you noticed that as someone that works with other businesses? Have you seen any changes in the way they're working?
Not that I've noticed, but I mean, I kind of have sort of I got tools that work, and that's all I want to know. So let's put it that way. The technology is, I'm hoping to try and have it as a tool, not that it is my master, which is often what seems to happen with technology, that, you spend all your efforts on to serve the technology instead of the technology serving you. Right. So, yeah,
What?
so definitely not an expert in this, as you probably know, Scott.
No, yeah, well, but there is something that I thought that our listeners would really like to hear your opinion on, because it's something that's really important to you, and you talked about it briefly, and that's that community, right? Communion with other people.
Yes.
And this is seeing a disruption of that community, right?
Yeah. Yes.
And it affects so many areas of our life. But as you pointed out, there is a group of people that work from an office. I mean, we have an office. There's members of our team that are there at certain days of the week, and they more or less have to be there at some point to do business. Larger companies do require a certain amount of staff. If everyone wants to work remotely, they basically have to close their doors. They require people for shipping and receiving and things like that. What do you think those companies could do to help maintain community for those workers that are left in the building? Do you see a way to help with that mental stress and anxiety of suddenly, we were 30 people, we used to meet in our coffee room, and we were a vibrant work community, and now there's 3 or 4 of us in the whole building?
Right. Yeah. That's a good question. I mean, maybe those kind of connection points can be around something more team oriented kind of a thing that's more of an enjoyable activity, right? Less in terms of getting the task done, because if you don't need to be all together to get the task done, if everybody's got their parts and they're contributing to those parts, so you don't need that. But in terms of having that community or that team building thing, that is perhaps more optional, other events that are more team based or fun based or just really just connection based kind of a thing, right? I could see that as being of value in that way to kind of still create that connectivity that way.
One of the other things, and I think that's a great perspective, but sort of rolled up in that, I'm 57, and I learned a lot about work and what I do from other people when
Sure.
that sort of mentoring situation. And I wonder about young people right now. For example, the workplace provided a lot of skills, and not just physical skills, but how to deal with stress. And there's always somebody you could talk to. My first real boss outside the ranch was a wonderful person, a woman, and it was unusual for a woman to have a male assistant, which is what I was. I was her administrator, her secretary, if you will. And that was a great learning experience for me, because I got a lot, we were working on a job site. We worked for British Steel. So for the British people, it wasn't so unusual. But on this job site of Sheerness plant was a few thousand people were there. I was the only male administrator there. All the rest were female. I was like 16 at the time, 17. So I mean, it didn't bother me that all of my colleagues were female. But that I learned a lot from that, is what I was trying to say. And I wonder how young people, like, I don't know if I was in my 20s and somebody said, "Oh, you go work from home." I don't know how that would turn out. Like now, it's great because I have a work ethic. I know what skills, I know what to do if I see myself backsliding or starting to, my productivity going down. How about you? I mean, did you find that you were mentored when you were young? And can you imagine what that'd be like if you weren't in that situation?
Well, I certainly was in workforces that I learned so much from my coworkers, right? And not only just about what we were trying to do and serve the clients, but in terms of just how you get along with different people,
Yeah.
right? Like, how you connect with them and figure things out. Because of course, being physically disconnected sometimes means that you are also like emotionally disconnected, if you will, and so that you don't learn how to interact well with other people, right? Without just the practice of doing it, kind of a thing, right? But then the second part of it too is I know when I was years and years ago, when I was in a home office kind of a thing, oh my goodness, it was certainly easy for me to be distracted, right? It was just like I had work to do, and then it was like, oh, wait a minute. And then you take a little bit to do this and a little bit to do that. And all of a sudden, like, 3 hours have gone by, that kind of thing. So, so I think that that's something that it will kind of, to be a home-based type worker, I think you have to be pretty self-disciplined in order to pull that off effectively, right? So,
Well, and I agree 100%. But like for me, I wake up really early every day. And for me, the three most, absolutely without question, the three most productive hours in any day are like from 5:30, to 9:30, right in
okay,
there for
yeah,
me. Like I get so much done in that time.
yeah,
And then
yeah,
I get a low, right? And
yeah.
then it's like, you know me, unless I've had a cup of coffee, it's hard for me to talk straight. But then I hit my stride. And then about 9 o'clock, 9:30, depending if I've started at 4:30 or 5:30, I kind of hit a lull. But at my age, I can say, yeah, okay, no problem. Work those hours. What does it matter?
Yeah.
Right? Like, if that's when you're most productive, work then. Who cares?
Exactly. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I don't know if my younger self would have had the confidence to say, yeah, follow what your body needs. Like,
Yeah.
unless somebody needs you, unless you were operating at 9 o'clock in the morning, which for me would not be a good thing for whoever my patient was. Because by that time I put in my 3-4 hours worth of morning work. I need to recharge. I just wonder how young people are going to find out about, the best way for them to work and the best way for them to deal with others, like you said. I think that's the one thing that worries me the most about working from home is human beings. Many of us love to work just to work. And then there's people that don't like to work and are perfectly happy when they're not working.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we all kind of learn more or less how to be healthy, how to cope, right? From coworkers when we start jobs, okay, you need to relax a bit. You've been going at it for 14 hours. You're not doing anything but pulling your hair out anymore. Take a break, go for a walk, come back at it in the morning, right? You've got that advice. I'm sure you have. I don't know. Do you think there's a place where young people, I think your daughter's, an academic. She's finished her doctorate. I think, the twins are in university. Now they've worked since they were like 12. Mm-hmm. So, they've had part-time jobs or 2 or 3 part-time jobs. So I'm pretty confident in their skills, but from their friends, that's pretty unusual, right? Mm-hmm. So maybe part-time jobs are where young people are going to get those skills. What do you think?
That might be it might be the right solution to that in order to kind of have a blend between, offsite work and still having connectivity within other people, kind of, and having that connection with other people and the kind of the commonality of how you're trying to serve your clients, collectively, kind of a thing, working together. Right. So, yeah,
well,
maybe.
I have a good question for you, I think, because I was thinking about our office is in a shared space, right? And that's one thing that's come out of this is it was sort of an experiment in the 80s that kind of died out. And then COVID sort of brought it all back again. And this idea that we don't need an office, 6 days a week. And, we don't need every little cubicle doesn't need a printer. And we don't need, a coffee room for every cubicle kind of thing. And do you find yourself building community with the other people that share our space? You're in the office more than I am. So,
yeah, I think so. Yeah, I certainly, I tour around and chat with people and meet them while I'm getting a coffee or on the way to the washroom or, those kind of things, or just walking down the hallway kind of a thing. So, yeah, I certainly do connect with other people in that regard and have exchanges with them. Right. So, yeah.
Great. Yeah, well, maybe that's an alternative, right? Maybe our work community needs to grow beyond being monolithic, like only our coworkers,
right,
to be people that share a space with us, or
right,
people that share a resource with us, like carpool or things like that. Maybe the solution lies there.
Yeah. No, I think that's a creative way to look at it in terms of to blend the needs of the employer to serve their clients and to, make sure that the needs of the team members are met in terms of their ability to contribute, but also their ability to connect and not feel isolated and be part of something bigger, right? So, yeah.
That's a great point. We're out of time, but I think we could summarize that by saying that, whatever your personal case is and whatever situation you're in, whether you're in a hybrid situation, whether you're working remotely full time, whether you're working in an office full time, ultimately you have to take responsibility for building a community and building those supports around you and asking for help if you need it, right?
Yeah, definitely so. Definitely so.
And we haven't talked about it, but we're lucky here. We have a number you can call if you find you need some support.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. 211 is the United Way has this number for if you need some mental health supports, you're having some challenges in your life, you have concerns, then give them a call and there's people ready to answer those calls and assist you. So, yeah, please use those resources.
Excellent. So for my very good friend, the acapellist Alan Friesen, and myself, Scott Sweetman, have a great, great week. Weekend's going to be nice, I hear. And we'll see you next week. Same time, same place.
All right. Get him, Matson.